Hi, everybody. This is Tracy, the founder of NarcissistAbuseSupport.com, a resource for victims of abuse. If you're looking for some kind of support, you're looking for a therapist, you're looking for free counseling, we have those listed by state on our website. We also have all kinds of blog posts and endless resources. So please check out our website. Today, I am so excited and honored to be interviewing Randi Fine. Randi Fine is a coach that helps victims of narcissist abuse and has been for about 8 years. She's also the author of this book, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind, the Narcissistic Abuse Survival Guide for Healing and Recovery. And today we're going to talk about healing from our past, the wounds that may have led us into a relationship with a narcissist, the wounds unhealed that will, not help us going forward, and the blockages that we have in trying to heal are often, founded in the roots of a childhood wound. So today we're going to kind of talk about a few of them and go through some of the tips that she does and she teaches her clients. So you're going to get lots of free advice and a free offer. If you stay around to the end, she's giving you something really cool. So without any further ado, let's welcome Randi.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I am so glad to be here on your show. Thanks for asking me to join you.
You're welcome. Want to tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. So I'm Randi Fine. I am the author of the latest book, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind, the Narcissistic Abuse Survivor's Guide to Healing and Recovery, which is a big part of what I do because I'm a narcissistic abuse expert and I counsel people all over the world who are suffering the abuses, whether it's relationship situations or marriage or childhood, or often it's all the above. So, yeah, you're shaking your head. Yes, so I do that. I'm also the host of my own podcast that I've been hosting for 8 years, which is called A Fine Time for Healing, and that's on Blog Talk Radio.
Very nice.
So I do a lot of writing and a lot of speaking.
And that's how I found you. I was Googling an article. I think it was on narcissistic children or something. I don't know, but there you were. And I went, oh, I love this girl. So here we are.
Okay.
Today we're going to talk about healing from the wounds of our past. And as you said in your introduction, so many people, including myself, when they find themselves in recurring relationships or even just one, you start to look at your past. And for me, it was, oh my God, mother, sisters, probably father. And so can you identify some of the wounds that people have that are from their past?
Oh gosh. Well, one of the major things, and this embodies a lot, is complex PTSD, which is not something that is exactly recognized in the DSM-5, the Bible of all mental health knowledge. But complex PTSD happens when you're exposed to trauma over a long period of time. So if you've had a childhood, a past of extensive abuse, and it just doesn't let up, then chances are you have complex PTSD. And what that does is it gives you suffer from flashbacks, depression,
anxiety. I mean, there's so many things.
So many things, exactly. It's so many things that it involves. But it's also very difficult to let those things go because it's so deeply programmed into you. And it's become a part of your identity. Mm-hmm. So it's not about just letting it go, which so many people will tell us to do, let it go. We don't, if we could, we would.
Right.
So that's why this is such an important topic to talk about.
Yeah, I mean,
But
there's to me, there were so many things. The PTSD, the CPTSD, certainly was not something that my doctor could identify. You know, he just thought I was going through a horrible divorce and didn't realize it had triggered and opened a door, a Pandora's box, if you would, of my entire life, and that opened that wound and so forth. Today is actually my 6-year anniversary of being divorced. So I looked at it and went, oh my God, look how far you've come. So, you know, when we go through this, we have that. We certainly have all of the brain numbing, mind blowing, walking into a room and forgetting what you're doing kind of symptoms with the PTSD. But for me, I had to learn things. And I think I started off with codependency. I'm not a big lover of everyone who's been narcissistically abused is a codependent. Certainly there's a percentage of them that has, but I went on to learn about boundaries. I didn't know about boundaries because having a narcissistic parent, we generally don't get taught that, because if we were taught boundaries, we would set them with them and their gig would be up. So for me, it was learning the boundaries. It was learning about people pleasing and how my need to make everybody happy was actually hurting me. And just the lack of self-love to stand up and go, you know, that's not good enough. No, you're not in my life. And I wasn't empowered with that sort of thing.
yes, codependency forms often when we do have narcissistic parents, because it's actually relationship codependency. There's different kinds of codependency, but what we're talking about is relationship codependency. And it forms because we do not forge an identity as children of narcissistic parents. And the reason we don't is because we're deprived of that. We're stunted in every way that we try to form that identity because, you know, as you said, boundaries are a threat. So is a child with an identity. So children, and this is part of, you know, what happens while we get stuck, but part of what happens is that we have to find some way to cope with the stressors in our life. And children don't have those coping mechanisms. They're not built in. These are not innate. Mm-hmm. Coping mechanisms are things that are taught to us from our parents, and then we springboard off of that when we get to be adults. Mm-hmm. So we do the very best that we can under the circumstance, but emotional abuse is extremely damaging and far more than physical abuse because it's intangible. So we can't touch it, we can't see it, we can't even sometimes feel it, mm-hmm. but yet the damage is being done to us. So we form these maladaptive coping mechanisms, and these are the ones we take with us into adulthood. Mm-hmm. And one of those is pleasing and forming the belief that we're only as good as we're told we are, and that our only purpose in life is to please other people. And that's where the codependency forms. So those of us who grew up this way, many of us have this. If we don't have that, then we generally develop some kind of personality disorder, because that's on the other end. You know, there's the soft way of dealing with it, and then there's the bully way of dealing with it. So yeah, codependency is very common.
It's very, very common. And so when you're working with people and they've got these wounds, these old things in our past, what kind of advice can you give the audience today that would tell them, do this to heal from your past?
Right. So, you know, it is a process like anything else. And sometimes, as I said earlier, our pain forms an identity for us. And it's the only identity that we know. And sometimes it's scary to give that up because we don't have a self when that goes. That has defined us for so many years. But what I do that works so well is validate the experience and have the person share with me exactly what happened and how they felt. And you wouldn't believe how effective support and validation are for those experiences, because so many of us live for years and years and years with our pain without anyone validating them. And as a matter of fact, we get mostly the opposite. Most people say, get over it. And as I said, if we could, we would. So the most important thing is to find someone who understands what you've been through and will validate those experiences and show you what you lack and how that relates to the pain you're experiencing now. Because there is a direct correlation between the two.
Yeah. And do you find the lack of self-love and self-confidence in the victims that have had these sort of childhood wounds?
Absolutely. Lack of self-love, self-worth, self-validation, no boundaries. And what you said about boundaries is very interesting, because none of us know what boundaries are. And even myself, when I was first told that my emotional pain was because of boundary issues, I'm like, what? You know, the boundary between what and what? So I didn't get it, and I had to learn to set boundaries in a gradual way. And the thing about setting boundaries that's so important is that boundaries must come with a consequence. Mm-hmm. Because many times we'll set a boundary and then we get upset when the person doesn't abide by the boundaries. We feel disrespected. But what we have to do is we set a boundary and we state a consequence. And when you first start setting boundaries, it's very important to state consequences that you can immediately follow through on. Because if you can't, then you lose all clout. And no matter what you do, you're not going to get respect. So you don't want to go all the way and say, all right, you know, if you do this again, I'm out. If you're not ready to go.
Right.
You know, so.
Exactly. I have a course on boundaries on my website, and that's exactly what I tell them, that you have to set achievable consequences. So again, going, if you do that again, I'm out of here. Well, no, you have nowhere to go. That's not a really, effective one. I have people that are always saying that they had a boundary that their ex couldn't cheat. I told them, I don't want you to cheat. But then they did 11 times. And I'm like, all right, well, what was the consequence? Well, then I'd yell at him again. No, a consequence is if you cheat again, I'm out of here. You're out of here. Something, there has to be. If we go back to teaching our children that they don't get dessert if they don't finish dinner, that's a consequence, right? You don't get to play video games till you finish your homework. That's a consequence. And when you have someone like an abuser, like a narcissist, when you've got someone like that, they're just going to take and test you every day. So everything that you put out there, if you say, I don't want you to cheat, but then they get away with it and you forgive them, you have just given them a permission slip to cheat for the rest of their life, because all they know is they got to bring you flowers or do whatever they did the first time to get you to forgive. There was no consequence. There was no accountability. And so when you've got an abuser, they are going to take advantage of this. So setting a boundary is one of the first skills I think people need to understand, because it empowers them. And when you start to set it, and you don't start off with the big one at first. You start off with, put away the laundry. You start off setting them, because again, not ever being told their whole life that you were giving control. I don't want this. You have to weave them into it slowly, or else it's going to fail, because they're going to react. They're going to cause a fuss. You're going to go back into that place of non-control, and you're going to be scared because look what happened when I tried to do it before. But you didn't start with put the seat down on the toilet. You didn't start small,
Right.
So to me, that's a huge part of recovery.
Yeah, it is. And so many people who have gone through manipulative relationships, they feel very unsafe in this world, because they feel like they could be attacked at any time by anybody. Mm-hmm. So when you develop boundaries, you get very empowered, And you don't have to be afraid anymore because you know how to define those boundaries with other people. But you brought up self-love and that kind of thing. Self-love is at the core of this healing. Mm-hmm. And self-love, there's 7 components to self-love. There's a lot that goes in, that's involved in self-love. And so by the time we get to the age that we are, we've obviously achieved some of them. I mean, if we hadn't achieved any self-love at all, we probably wouldn't be here anymore because we wouldn't be able to deal with life. So we've achieved a certain amount. But like in my book, I have a whole chapter on all the elements of self-love so that you can go through and see what you're doing, what you've achieved, what you haven't achieved, and know what you have to work on. And I tell people to go really slow with it, But the best thing to do is to start with the intention every day. When you wake up, to start with the intention that today I'm going to love myself a little bit more than I did yesterday. And if it's just a little millimeter, that's fine. But I say do something for yourself every day so that you recognize how important you are. Self-love gets very confused with selfishness. And if you've been with a narcissist, selfishness is the most repulsive, ugly thing you could ever think of, and you never want that to be you. Mm-hmm. But the difference is that self-love is a well that's always full. Selfishness takes from everybody else. You're just taking, you're not giving. When you have self-love, you just have this pull, this ever-flowing pull of generosity and love to give. So, and we come into this world alone and we leave this world alone. We really have to take care of us. That's probably the biggest responsibility we have to ourselves for this gift of life, is to take care of ourselves and our needs, and everything will flow from there. I also wanted to talk about, we were talking about childhood and pain and things like that. Many of the clients that I have some recognition of the pain that they experienced, but not all. And what's truly amazing, and this goes back to the validating and supporting, in that my first session is always an hour and a half. In that first session where they really get validated and supported and know that I understand, truly get what they're experiencing and how they feel, all this stuff starts bubbling up to the surface. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember. Oh, right. I remember when this. And I tell them, over the next course of the week, you are going to remember a lot, because that frees it up so dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an important piece. And I really appreciate that you said that. I think that the victims have been beaten down so much. And again, the difference between the narcissist self-love, like he's more important or she's more important than self-love and honoring yourself, putting yourself first, because so many people don't do that, especially when we've been people pleaser codependents. We put everyone else's needs before our own. And our inner child is just getting smaller and smaller and crying out, hello, I'm here. And so when we start to validate ourselves, when we start to take care of ourselves, there's a wonderful video out there by a woman. It's a TED Talk by Tracy Malone. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It is The Person That I Should Have Married. And she gets on stage talking about the 3 failed marriages that she had, and how all along that she was always looking for someone else to fill her self-love hole. But she should have married herself, for better or for worse. For the fact that she's had 3 marriages, give yourself a break. There's self-forgiveness in that, in saying, okay, I made a mistake. I didn't know better. That's all the excuse you need to validate and get past it. Because so many people that I work with and in my groups, loving themselves and forgiving themselves is one of the hardest parts of this. I can't believe I stayed so long. I should have done this. I didn't do that. And all of that is holding you from getting well. Forgiving yourself first to say, I didn't know any better. I stayed because of the kids, or I stayed because financially I couldn't leave, or I stayed here. But look, I passed all that and I'm here now. And I've got to make a work at this, and I've got to love myself. I date myself. At least once a week, I go out and I'm like, whether it's walk around a thrift store for 5 hours and just mindlessly wander, or go to a movie or a dinner. I just enjoy myself and I'm not self-conscious. A lot of people are like, oh my God, you go to dinner by yourself or a movie? And I'm like, nobody's going to tell me what to do. I just get to go. It's so much fun. And so self-love is taking care of yourself when you're tired, and saying no to other people that might demand your time, and say, I really would love to help you move today, but I've got something else. And then you go home and you curl up on the couch with a book. Don't feel guilty about that. You are entitled to have that kind of peace in your life and choice.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that really release people from pain. And the one thing is that I give them permission to be who they are, because we feel as if we have standards to live up to in order to be accepted by other people. We're supposed to do it this way, and we're supposed to do it that way. And I tell people, let that go. Be who you are and accept yourself, your quirks, everything good about you, the mistakes that you made, if you're funny, whatever it is, embrace it all. That's really, really important to self-love. People who have been in these abusive relationships, one thing that really holds them back is their own self-deprecation. So, and they don't realize that what they say to themselves is not loving. These are not loving thoughts. So they think, well, I might be doing something loving for myself, but then they're saying, I should have, I wish I had, I could have. And another thing that releases people from this guilt is that I explain to them the mechanisms that have been used on their mind to change their way of thinking, so that they understand that while in the midst of this abuse, they could not have thought any differently, because they're programmed, and that's a huge misconception about narcissistic abuse. It's not a matter of getting over it. It's a matter of deprogramming and reprogramming your mind. Mm-hmm. You have a lot to get out and a lot to put in. Mm-hmm. But it's not as daunting a task as it may sound. It sort of evolves and it happens. The way it happens is that we have to be very conscious of the thoughts we're having and be picky with what we allow to go through our head, because thoughts just run through there. So much of it is old stuff. So we have to pay attention to it, and we have to analyze the thoughts. The other thing is intuition. How you feel is right all the time, no matter it. And when you're in a narcissistic abuse situation, you go from your intuition and you go, no, cancel, and you go right to the programming. Mm-hmm. And you skip what you really know. So people who have suffered this truly know what they have to do, but they're programmed not to trust it.
Yeah. And they've also, like, that intuition has come up during the relationship, whether, again, parent or a romantic situation or anything. And you've tried to break out, you've tried to speak up, and you get shut down. So they're training you. That programming is in training you. If you speak up, you're going to get squished back down. So now you have to learn that it's safe to speak up again, and learn that it's okay to make a mistake. Yeah, whatever it was, you made a mistake. Maybe you shouldn't have done that, but hey, we're human. Nobody in this world doesn't make a mistake. So it's in forgiving ourselves for that and moving on to some of the other healing modalities.
Right. Yeah. So, letting this pain go is very difficult, but so is holding on to it.
Much higher.
One is not easier than the other. And And though we wish we could change what has happened in the past,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about analyzing it and figuring it out, because we never will.
Mm-hmm.
It's about acceptance, coming to terms with it is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't ever about us. It had nothing to do with us.
Mm-hmm.
But it just was. And, we can accept something and not like it. We don't have to like it.
Right. Yeah. That's good. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any closing remarks you want to just throw in there? One more thought?
Yeah, well, I have an offer for everybody who's listening. So if you email me at loveyourlife@randigfine.com, that's RANDIGFINE.com, I will email you a copy of Identify and Heal Your Hidden Emotional Problems home workshop. It's a mini workshop that you can do at home, where you go through different ages and you identify the positive and negative thoughts and feelings that you had at that time, and then you begin to challenge them. So I list all kinds of things. So email me at loveyourlife@randigfine.com, and I will fire that right off to you.
Awesome. We'll put a link below so everyone can have that, as well as to your website. And again, this is her book, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind. Who's had that happen? You need this book. Look at how thick it is. It's got so much information. I can't wait to dig into this thing. So thank you so much.
It is the most comprehensive book out there.
That's what I'm so excited about it. There's nothing that isn't in here. So I love to suck this up. I have become this narcissist, book maniac.
It's fascinating. It is a fascinating topic.
It really is. And I'm going on vacation in a couple of days, and I have 3 books for a 5-day vacation plan. And I'm like, but I'm like, I got to soak it up. And what's better than sitting on the deck of a boat and reading narcissist books? It'll keep away the really scary people too. They're like, oh, she's going through a divorce with a narcissist. Better
Right.
keep away from her. So it's almost like a little safety Band-Aid here.
I've actually put books on the cruise ship libraries.
Oh, what a good idea.
When I'm on the ship, I'll drop one off in the library.
What a brilliant idea. Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We're going to have the links to your website down below, and everyone take her up on that offer. I know I'm going to shoot her an email when we're done, and we'll get that out to you guys as soon as possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks. Thank you so much for watching this video and this interview. My channel is dedicated to interviewing the experts that are writing these books, because I know it's very hard for victims of abuse to get out there and buy all of these books. So I'm bringing the authors to you. And I highly recommend that you get her book and start to heal yourself, because this recovery journey is a journey, and it is something that you can't do alone. We have taken a long time to get to this place, and when we want to heal, we need to change what we currently do, and that means learn something. If you're going to Mexico, and you wanted to learn Spanish, what would you do? You would study. So this is your studying. Try to get her book. Get out there, get to a library, find a book, and start learning and start healing. This is Tracy. Please visit my website. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. That would be awesome. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.